Meeting. First on the agenda is call to order, and then roll call, please.
Basil.
Here.
Latia.
Here.
Rizzler.
Here.
Bazanowski. Meyer.
Here. Okay, next is the meeting minutes from the June 18th, 2025 meeting. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chairperson, I move to approve June 18, 2025 Planning Commission meeting minutes.
Second.
Okay, it's a motion approved and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, we're good to go. No, there's no old business. New business, recommendation of Spring Street Certified Survey Maps, CSM 25-04. Sam?
All right, Mr. Chair, members of the commission, the applicant applied to divide the property into 3 lots. They intend Lot 1 for the first phase of the approved Seasons at Spring Street multi-unit building development. They intend Lot 2 for the second phase of that development, and Lot 3 for the related stormwater detention facility required for the development. The map also dedicates 40 feet to the public for Carrington Boulevard north of Spring Street. That's County Trunk Highway C, as shown on the village's comprehensive plan. The village board approved a development agreement with Fred Spring Street HC LLC and Fred Spring Street 2 HC LLC that contemplated this map in the approved development phasing. The property is currently zoned AG2. However, the village board approved the RM zoning for that property with Ordinance 26/2022. That zoning shall automatically take effect when the applicant purchases the property per the approval ordinance. The village staff recommends that the Plan Commission move to recommend approval of CSM 2504 to the village board, subject to conditions within the endnotes, which I'll give a highlight for in a second. The packet, you can see the site location, the comprehensive plan, the zoning for the area. There's been a few applications subject to this property, all related to the Seasons at Spring Street development, including the original zoning, the site plan, and now the CSM. The application follows the land use element of the multi-jurisdictional comprehensive plan for Racine County 2035, and neither the Village of Mount Pleasant Master Bicycle Plan 2030 nor a Park and Open Space Plan for the Village of Mount Pleasant 2050 contain any recommendations for the subject property. The application has a couple updates that we need to see that we called out. I'll go through those endnotes in a second. For the fiscal analysis, as you can see, the estimated taxable value per acre is just about $3.3 million. It meets a TID open revenue to cost ratio of 1:1, TID closed revenue to cost ratio of 3:1, and a total revenue to cost ratio of 1:1, a private to public ratio of 119:1, which is pretty high. It is estimated to repay its public liability under standard conditions in 3 years. The current value for the property is currently just $8,500 because it has an agricultural assessment, which is 100% of the property. The development agreement estimated both phases of the project would have an improvement value about $85 million. When TID 7 is open, the development is entitled to a municipal revenue obligation of about $12.5 million at 6% interest. This revenue obligation is primarily intended to reimburse the developer for their upfront cost of installing the public improvements for the property, including the northwards extension of Carrington Boulevard and the future extension of Rosewood Lane in Phase 2. Upon TID closure and normalized tax collections, the project is expected to generate net revenue of approximately $350,000 a year, taking public infrastructure and service costs into account. The updates that we have in the endnotes as conditions or recommended conditions for approval include a couple minor updates, just map things that the village requires for its certified survey maps, including showing the updated zoning district, that RM district, some minimum lot area requirements. Number 3 is showing a future road reservation on the east property line, and the number 3 is restricting direct access to Spring Street and between the Carrington Boulevard right-of-way and the future Rosewood Lane right-of-way. They will have to access the site per their approved site plan off of those more local streets heading north from Spring Street. The applicant shall also update the CSM to show some cross-access easements between lots 1 and 2 because they are subdividing, the full development. They'll have to grant themselves access legally across those properties. A couple utility things that we'd like to see updated now that the village, and shown on the map, now that the village has finished its installation of the sewer and water out there. Then finally, changing the Lot 3 and just label it as Outlot 1. The only difference being outlots are not intended for development for future buildings, and so relabeling that as an outlot instead of a lot. And then finally, condition 7, which is updating the CSM to show a roadway reservation for Rosewood Lane along the 33 feet, eastern 33 feet of Lot 2. And that is per the village board's development agreement with the applicant. If they move forward with phase 2, subject to certain conditions, they would be required to dedicate that land. So we just want it denoted as a future reservation. And we have that dedication agreement already signed and sealed. So I can answer any technical questions about the map. The applicant is here if you have any questions from fiduciary. Otherwise, pretty simple one, just kind of tying up loose ends so they can get started on this development.
Anybody? Rob?
Sam, just a quick question. So this is going to be right across from where right now on the south side of Spring Street, we have construction going on, just right on the other side.
Correct. Yep.
Just want to make sure location. And on the southwest corner of the Lot 1 on Spring Street, that's the Carrington Boulevard. And I'm trying to understand when you say leave about 30 feet west of the property, east of the Carrington Boulevard, can you elaborate a little bit more on that, please?
Yeah, so if you go to sheet 3 of the CSM, it's the one that shows lots 1, 2, and 3. It says sheet 3 of 6 in the bottom corner.
Sheet 2 and 3 of 6. Ours are, we're separate, it's all one.
The one which shows Lot 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah, so on sheet 3 of 6 on the CSM, you'll see kind of a 33.01 feet denoted along that east property line. That's where we'd like that road reservation to be. So really just their half of the roadway along the entire east property
All the way to
line.
the Spring Street.
Yep, correct. So starting from there, moving west, we would like, until you get to Carrington Boulevard, we would like them to note just an access restriction. So cars won't be able to directly access Spring Street. That's a note from the county. They've already gone through their traffic impact analysis and everything, so it's more of just a legal cleanup, but the applicant has agreed to that access restriction. The county actually mandated it as part of their review of the traffic for the development.
Thank you.
Is there any history of how this land was subdivided and why? It's kind of an unusual split.
It is old enough that there is no other certified survey map on file. So my assumption is it goes back to the original deed for the property itself, which is over 50 years. So yeah, most of these old properties were divided via legal description pre-1970s more often than not, where farmers could just go into the Register of Deeds and be like, I'm selling this chunk to my son, and then the Register of Deeds would denote the property split. More recent on file that we have. I don't know if you've found anything else on title, Paul. Yeah, just an old farm property.
You're talking about the overall property, but now we're talking about subdividing it now.
Correct.
So, and I got a couple of questions in regards to this, because it sounds like you're going to start the development on Lot 1. That's going to be, and then finish up on Lot 2 at a future date. Is that the plan?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Quick question. Why is the south side of Lot 2, because you guys delineated that, Why is that got such a breakup and not a straight line?
Due to the site plan, they need to hit certain setbacks from the buildings, so we worked with the applicant. I'll let Paul to speak to it more
Yeah.
if he wants, but at least from the village's perspective, we reviewed their draft plans to make sure that the rear yard setbacks and everything were in compliance. When you look at the site plan, there are some green spaces in there and stuff, so it's not kind of an even property line as it's laid out. Some of the buildings are slightly staggered, so to meet those setbacks and then follow some of those green space lines, that's just kind of how it ends up looking without any building context in the map.
Okay, because obviously there's any future buildings on that lot 2, you're gonna have to deal with those irregularities again. That's why
Yeah.
it's kind of,
There's really only one building where it kind of jogs north there. There's one building up there, and then some of the other buildings in Lot 2 are, that one, the building is oriented kind of east-west long ways, so that's where it's skinnier, and then some of the other buildings on Lot 2 are oriented north-south, and that's where the property's a bit wider.
okay. And just to continue that thought here in regards to Lot 2, because you're gonna be using Lot 3 as, well, an outlot now, as the stormwater drainage. Two things, Lot 2, obviously you're gonna have to do the development of that, I mean, at least the grading and do something with it, because it's gonna be adjacent to the outlot now, or the stormwater drainage. My second question is where is that the drainage going?
I'll let Paul
Yeah.
speak to their individual site grading plans and
Thank you.
stuff. Do you have any other questions for me while I'm up here?
No.
Okay.
Your name and address, please, Paul.
Paul Schmitter with Fiduciary Real Estate Development, 789 North Water Street, Milwaukee. With regard to some of these questions, it is a little confusing seeing these outlines without the buildings on them. So we worked with Sam to just kind of figure out how we could break this up in order to accommodate 2 phases of the development, similar to kind of how our project down at Brown Road ended up. So, with that, we kind of know that the first phase is just rough numbers, about 2/3 of the project, and that's how we kind of left the last, I think it's 5 or 6 buildings. I've managed to confuse myself now, to the second phase. So that's how this is really looking at it. It's just kind of a conservative approach on our part. The plan would be to roll into the second phase as we are still, hopefully on site and working towards, the completion of phase 1.
So, and again, my second part of my question was in regards to finishing Lot 2, at least grading it to the finished grade, so that you're gonna, because that's gonna be the part that's gonna be flowing into the stormwater drainage, and then where's that drainage going?
I believe it flows to, and I apologize, my civil engineer's on vacation, so I couldn't bring him with. I believe there's a ditch and a wetland behind it. I think it finds its way into that, but only in like back-to-back 100-year flows or something like that. I think that's about how it works.
Well, assuming that Tony and his group look at this, right? Okay.
Yeah, in fact, we just got our approval letter from Tony yesterday.
Oh, okay, well, that's good.
Yeah.
I just wanted, kind of curious, because you're kind of landlocked there. It's like, it's in the back of the lot. A lot of times the stormwater is up front, so that you can, we can move it down, through the stormwater system or the ditches, but, so I didn't know where
Yeah,
it went.
that site actually does flow all the way back towards that, so it's really kind of letting gravity help us out with
Okay.
collecting the water in that area.
Paul, a couple of questions. Is it going to be a similar kind of condos and apartment that you have at the Seasons at the Brown Road?
Yeah, they'll be identical.
Almost identical?
Yep.
With the clubhouse and everything?
The clubhouse, yep, and I think the colors are different and some of the brick, things like that, but yeah, this is what we call our Seasons product. So they're 20-unit buildings, so they're virtually identical to the Braun Road units.
Approximately how many units are we
The first phase is 220 units, and
in lot one?
yes,
Okay.
and again, I think it's 5 additional in phase 2.
Okay, I was just curious, and although, and last question is, again, just curiosity, I know that there's a lot of process, you know, the site plan and everything has to be approved by, but based on right now what you know and what Sam knows, what do you think is your schedule to start the construction?
September,
This year?
yes,
That's pretty fast.
yeah. Well, we've
I mean,
been
it's
working
good.
on this for 3 years.
It's good, you know, I thought you might say like next year or something like that.
No,
I
I believe we close on the property tomorrow, if that hasn't been rescheduled. We got our approval letter from Tony yesterday. We're scheduled for both Racine Water and Sanitary for their August meeting, which puts us, I think, the first week of September for Common Council. I'll be working with Sam for erosion control permits, so it's gearing up for first or second week in September that we'll be starting.
And my last comment is a comment, I think, as I talked to you, FYI, I have a friend who was looking to move into, to downsize to rent, and they looked at many condos and apartments in Mount Pleasant, and they like your seasons at Braun the best.
Oh, good.
So my compliments to you, because, you know, they were highly impressed, and they're gonna be living over there, so, you know, so that's what I was saying, if this is gonna be same as you,
Yeah.
as that one, it's gonna be pretty high class, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, that's the plan.
Yep.
So, thank you for that.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Josh?
The way the wetland area is delineated there, it looks like, to me, the original outlet is just piled up in that corner of it.
There's actually a rather large drain tile underneath that wetland and that ditch that does, you know, our pond will, what's called infiltrate. So it's really, our pond infiltrates into the soil, and I'm guessing that at some point it finds its way down over to that drain tile, or it's more like a culvert at this point. I think that's how that's working, but.
Maybe a section for them to live.
I believe so. I know it's designed to meet all the standards, and I know we had talked to Tony about this starting probably last November, so it's been reviewed, and it's had quite a bit of conversation about how all of that has worked, and Tony is comfortable with it.
I'm assuming that when that area is built up, there's gonna be a lot more focus for it.
Yes and no. I mean, it's the way that the DNR looks at this, and everybody enforces it, is, you know, we're not allowed to have any more water runoff leave the site pre-development versus post-development, so it has to be the same. So what we do is build these large ponds, and they infiltrate, so the water really just soaks back into the ground for the most part, unless there's any sort of a huge back-to-back, like 100-year flood, something like that, then there's overflows built in, but that's a rarity.
Hey, Tosh, use your microphone too. They can't pick it up. So. Is that it? Anybody else? Nobody else? Thank you, Paul. Appreciate it. Okay, I'm looking for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move to recommend the approval of the Spring Street CSM-25-04 as presented. Certified survey map, I should set that too.
I second
Got a motion and a second? All in favor?
that.
Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimous. Okay. Good luck, and we finally see something going up out there. That'll be nice. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the recommendation of ordinance 11/2025 at 2702 and 2706 Chicory Road zoning map amendment ZMA 25-07.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, the applicant applied to amend the zoning map for the properties from C4, which is general industrial, to C3, which is high-intensity commercial. The applicant wishes to open a daycare center for more than 30 enrollees. The city of Racine generally surrounds the parcel on the north side of Chicory Road, and this parcel formerly held the Humane Society before it moved out adjacent to 90th Street there. The village staff recommends that the Plan Commission move to recommend approval of ordinance 11-2025, 2702 and 2706 Chicory Road zoning map amendment, ZMA 2507, to the village board. On the second page of this packet, you can see the site location and how this one is kind of really surrounded by there's industrial to the south of Chicory Road. There's some of the new utility storage that was built there as part of some sanitary projects. And then to the east, there's some industrial in the city of Racine. And then to the north and west, there's some residential within the city of Racine. So an interesting mix of land uses there. The comprehensive plan shows this as industrial, and it's currently zoned C4. The site history, the Humane Society was there for a long time until they built that new one. So recent site history is just some zoning compliance permits on file and then this map application. The application aligns with the land use element of the comp plan. The C3 zoning district allows for both commercial and industrial uses. So when it says industrial out there, that's how the village staff viewed it, as C3 still allows industrial uses. So this zoning application is permitted. The bike plan recommends a bicycle trail along Chicory Road. However, the application does not trigger the need for the applicant to install that improvement, and a park and open space plan for the village of Mount Pleasant does not recommend anything for the subject property. The village staff, for a fiscal analysis, do not anticipate a significant change in the assessed value for the property. Any future improvements for the subject property may result in changes to the property's assessments. The current property value for the collective properties is about $580,000, which generates just under $10,000 in annual tax revenue. The zoning map amendments procedures in the ordinance, which are listed in there, control the application procedures. The applicant posted the notice signs and everything required by ordinance, and for neighbor communications, they also mailed out a mailer notice to surrounding properties and provided us the list of people who they mailed that out to. As of so far, we haven't received any public feedback from those mailers, and the applicant hasn't sent us anything as well. We'll check in again with the applicant before the public hearing on Monday regarding those. Other than that, we don't have any conditions and recommend approval.
I think this is a great area for a childcare center. And Everett schools on the south side of this property is surrounded by apartments. And it's got a nice subdivision on the west side. I think it's a area.
Any thoughts of what they're planning to do with the half-acre vacant parcel to the east? Roughly half-acre.
Current is they'll likely keep it open as part of, child care centers per state law are supposed to have a certain amount of open space per student. So I think they're going to use it for that in the short term. We'll likely work with the applicant to merge the two properties together if that's what they're going to use it for in the long run. And we'll work through that with them when they submit their zoning compliance permits for the actual use, if this zoning is approved.
Get one more tax key number off the rolls, right?
Exactly, yeah, particularly a vacant tax key number that is there. It's also an old platted property, as you can see on the survey. The property line still goes out to the middle of Chicory Road, so we'll work with the applicant if they actually want to dedicate the right-of-way and, stop paying some
Stop paying.
marginal land taxes on,
Right.
40 feet of Chicory Road, the village would accept that dedication, and, they can more clearly square off where their property lines are versus the right-of-way.
I move to recommend approval of ordinance 11-2025, 2702 and 2706 Chicory Road zoning map amendment, ZMA-25-07 to the village board.
I'll second.
Got a motion and a second for approval. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimous.
And Mr. Chair, if I could, while I'm still standing up here,
Yes,
I know we don't have any staff reports, but I just wanted to interject before Robin comes up to talk about the zoning text amendment, that Chair Driver informed me last month that he is actually moving out of state later this fall. And so he will be stepping down from the Plan Commission when he's no longer a village resident. I believe he'll be back next month in August, but after that, he will likely step down as long as his home construction in the Carolinas goes according to plan. So I thought I would let the commission know that Chair Driver, if you'd like to reach out to him, he'll be here next month as well. But also, if you have any ideas for anyone else who might be a good commissioner to replace him, please reach out to President DeGroot, who makes those appointments to the village board. And if any of you are interested in chairing the commission, also please discuss that with President DeGroot or Administrator Simons. Typically, we like to onboard the permanent chairs a little bit too. So I thought I would just interject that for you all to stew on for the next month, and then we can wish Davis well next month when he's back.
sounds good.
I can see Joe Meyer looking at you and
Ah,
making plan how he's going to spend all that extra money he's going to make.
all right. On that note, let's see here. You're all set. Last item is, I've got it buried someplace here, is discussion of 90-420.100 parking area layout and design zoning text amendment. And it's only for discussion today.
That is correct. I get the real exciting stuff. If by exciting, I mean dry. I'd never, when I went to school, I didn't know I would be able to write this much about 1 foot parking lane exceptions, but dreams. Okay, so this discussion is to source opinions from you guys on how to go about amending the code for 90-420.100 parking area layout and design, which requires a 90-degree perpendicular parking. When a 90-degree perpendicular parking lot, the parking stalls have 9 feet width and 17 feet length, and the drive aisles must be 22 feet wide. This is according to table 90-240-2, which is here. And so we have approved, the Board of Zoning Appeals has approved 2 variances to this in short order within the past few months. And we've also kind of identified 1 additional development, the Johnson Bank building, that it just doesn't get amended. They'll have to apply for a variance as well. Generally, as staff, we kind of view variance requests and non-controversial approvals of those requests as the canary in the coal mine, as far as maybe this isn't working as intended. And when doing some analysis, and it kind of, I break it down in the parking adjustments available, all of that section talks about how you can get leeway when it comes to parking lots. So just generally, these apply to parking lots over a certain number of spaces. They don't apply to workspaces. So if it's like for ambulances, or it's the truck parking behind a loading dock or something like that, that doesn't apply there. So the actual statement at the top, it says parking areas must be designed in accordance with 90-420-2. So that must is kind of takes priority of anything else. So we haven't been allowing deviations from this. And that's kind of unlike other parts of the ordinance. So the community development director can approve exceptions to parking minimums with 420.40G and maximums via 420.50 parking increases. However, parking minimums or maximums don't affect the size of stalls or the drive aisles. The director can also, per this table, can interpolate or extrapolate, however you want to word that, requirements for layouts that are not shown on this table. So if it's not one of these angles, then the community development director has the authority to basically come up with requirements. However, if it's on this table, then it needs to conform to those requirements. The director can, the plan commission, you guys can approve conditional use via the alternative plans and layouts for large vehicles and semi-tractor truck and trailer parking. We've had a couple of those before. But these parking lots that have been applying for this are not for heavy vehicles or tractor trailer trucks, so that doesn't apply. So additionally, parking stall sizes and aisle widths, they're not addressed in the alternative compliance via the architectural regulations, and they're not under authorized administrative adjustments, which is in section 565. However, administrative adjustments usually give kind of 10 to 15% leeways on a lot of different things about a property, including maximum number of parking spaces and minimum number of parking spaces are both something that can be under there. So there's a lot of exceptions that can be made that are around this general topic, but doesn't hit this exact one. And because of our phrasing at the top here, as far as must conform, we've been kind of forced to stick to it. As there is no power to modify the parking layouts given in the ordinance, staff can only offer relief to the applicants via application for a variance, which 2 have done and 2 have been approved. There have also been some other developments where we missed this because it's a very minor thing. I'm not always checking every single parking space, you know? Both applications have been approved without much discussion. Staff is committed to correcting flaws in the zoning code. So we are basically sourcing your guys' opinion. So in general, the parking lot standards are designed to do a few things. They're designed to preserve aesthetics, safety, and reduce the amount of unnecessary impervious surface in the village to mitigate stormwater runoff. And we do acknowledge that flexibility in other parts of the code is not here, so we want to do that. So the options are as forward, and I outlined these in the packet. And I also didn't really spell out how we feel about these options because I wanted you guys to come into this with an open mind. So I'm going to go over these. I'll open the floor, and then I can tell you basically how staff opinion of these options are and proceed from there. But the options are, one, basically the exception process for parking minimums and maximums. So that requires possibly a parking study as well as stormwater mitigation, subject to approval from the community development director. 2 is the interpolation allowance in the chart itself. We can basically rephrase that to kind of apply to lots of different things, so that if it's not unreasonable and it's approved by our village engineer and by a professional engineer, that it can be approved. The architectural exception process, which we have talked about a couple of times this year. Generally, that process requires that a property go above and beyond requirements in other areas and present a truly exceptional result in order for certain requirements to be waived. We can add a provision to the authorized administrative adjustments. That's already the statute. organized for that sort of thing, which basically notifies adjacent property owners, waits for any potential objections, and generally has a set percentage limit. We can amend the conditional use permit process and the alternative plans and layout for large vehicle and semi-tractor truck and trailer parking to be approved by the village board and plan commission. Basically, that is the existing thing to approve an alternative parking lot layout. So that could apply. 6, rewrite the parking dimensions, the actual overall of it, to provide a blanket flexibility. So plus or minus 10% or something like that. And number 7 is continue as is and require variances for the exceptions. So a lot of those things, that's a lot to throw at you, I know. But we like to be thorough, and we don't want to necessarily kind of push one. That's why we were talking about this. And so you guys can figure, if you guys have any questions of me, we could stop at this point and I can answer some questions. You can also mix and match if you like a particular requirements, because all of these have different criteria in order to meet these kind of things. So you can mix and match that. So I know this is something that's pretty small, but there are other aspects that this could apply to. So while I'm saying that it's by the 9x18 stall and 24-foot drive aisle, it also would be any variation to any of these parking lot arrangement or layouts. A lot of times we just get kind of complaints about Dodge Rams or something of similar size. Now, personally, I don't think we should design every parking space around a Dodge Ram, because not everybody drives a Dodge Ram. And, you know, those are big. So, but, you know, if a private property owner wants to come in and accommodate that, say it's for the garden center or a Lowe's or whatever, that makes sense to accommodate larger trucks. So we want to be able to have that flexibility. Now, go.
Okay, I got a real quick question, because when you have 7.5 foot widths, the property owner, and obviously if somebody came in and said, I'm doing all mine in 7.5 foot widths, what would you say to them?
I mean,
Because obviously if somebody pulls in with a big old truck, you've now eliminated, either they have to identify it as a compact car space or something, because otherwise you're just gonna have a mess out there.
yeah, we have some allowances for some compact car spaces, which have to be only a certain percentage of spaces, and would, you know, there's a call out for that in the code as well, as far as compact car stuff.
Do they need to be marked
Yeah.
as such? Identified? Okay.
Yeah. So and we try to just kind of blanket say that it can go either way. But we've only gotten a request to go up and not down so far. You know, and if somebody's going down, and if they're saying, hey, well, we here at the ethically sourced vegan produce stand, well, we only get Priuses in here, and they're small cars. So, and I drive a small car, so maybe that's their clientele. And if they want to stick with that, they can. But for the most part, they still have to meet other parts of the regulation. That's why we're sourcing it. Sorry.
But you don't want them to be putting smaller spaces in to meet the minimum requirement for parking spots for their business, because then it's jamming a whole lot into one small space.
Honestly, we've only been coming into problems with maximums.
Yeah.
Like the minimums are pretty low right now, and that's for good reason. Parking lots don't typically pay tax bills, and parking lots also add to tax bills via stormwater. You know, it's all going to run off somewhere. So we want the property owners to basically pick the minimum amount they think is necessary.
One thing that I would have a question of with the 7.5 foot spaces is that as these buildings mature and occupancies change, parking requirements would sometimes change as well, and vehicle sizes change. So perhaps there's definitely a need to limit the number of what I'll call substandard spaces at 7.5 foot, because someday it might be a different use that would cater more to a larger clientele, or clientels with larger vehicles.
Yeah, and I guess I didn't necessarily think about, whether or not somebody could come in and get a blanket approval for 7.5 foot spaces all over. You technically could park a car in a space that small, but it is tight. There's an article just the other day about parking lots sizes is in Milwaukee City Hall and how it wasn't big enough for a particular alderman. So that was pretty funny. I laughed.
Mr. Chair, do you mind if I weigh in a sec?
Yeah, absolutely.
I just want to reframe the conversation. I think we can all acknowledge that some of the applicants are finding difficulty with some of the parking stall sizes. We've tried to size them so they're on the smaller end to reduce stormwater impact. But in acknowledging it, we're not asking you to think too hard about how big the sizes are. I think we've clued in and we're currently working with that. The question in front of you is, if someone doesn't want to build those sizes, how should we provide them that relief? Instead of requiring them to apply for a zoning variance, which the Board of Appeals has now granted twice in 2025, what's the appropriate kind of alternative compliance procedure? So that's what we'd like to, kind of get your feedback on. Typically, the way that we've been bending lately is to give a little and get a little, right? So we have our standard sizes, but if you wanted to come in with all sizes that fit in F-150, you're going to have more stormwater. So what do we link to that? I think that's why one of our preferences for a potential solution is to say you can have flexibility, but you might have to incorporate other stormwater features into your site, like bioswales or rain gardens, to help offset it. So the essential, like, you can build it by right, but then if you want to do more than that, we're requiring a little bit of a higher site aesthetic standard for those types of spaces. So I think what we'd really like your feedback on is that an appropriate one? Do you want us to just kind of instead interpolate sizes, as Robin said? Do you want us to go to a different exemption process that perhaps goes through a different route? So, what do you think is an appropriate way for applicants to kind of find that relief without needing a zoning variance?
Yeah, and the thing is 10% is a spitball figure.
Yeah.
Obviously, we'll come back with that if that's not the number or whatever, but we're just trying to figure out what exception process would you guys like to use, if any, for this kind of thing. So, other questions?
In number 4, authorized administrative adjustments, what is involved in this particular ordinance paragraph? What does that say exactly?
Do you reject it specifically, Sam, or either one of us?
To you, Robin, that's fine.
Okay.
If you had the answer, that's great.
Oh, I do. It's okay. So basically, that is what we always like to coin the mini variances, where there is some flexibility on certain, usually measurement-based portions of the code, whether it's height, setbacks, and a couple of other parking lot numbers and stuff like that, where somebody can apply for an administrative adjustment and get relief of about 10%. So if there's a 25-foot setback, somebody can apply for an administrative adjustment to get 15% off that, which is 2.5 plus 7.5, which is 3.25 off, which puts you at 21.75 feet. So it gives you a little bit. It won't be able to get you down to like 15 feet or 10. You would still need to go to the Board of Zoning Appeals for that. But that generally is a route that requires an exception that needs to be approved by the Community Development Director and does notify neighbors. But it doesn't require a full Board of Zoning Appeals hearing for just a couple feet. So that is what that is for and what it's designed for. It does require some extra steps. Usually it's about we do have a 2-week waiting period where after a mailer goes out, we wait to see if somebody wants to raise the issue. Anything you want to add, Sam, on that?
Well, you guys ought to do whatever you gotta do to avoid variances, because they shouldn't be rubber stamps, which it sounds like these would be. So you need to probably specify a certain number of parking spaces per development, and then maybe adjust accordingly to make sure that they fit and they actually function. You know, like a Lowe's, you're not gonna want everything in the 120 lot thing being 7.5 feet wide, because all these yahoos are driving these god-awful big pickup trucks that, you know.
Wow, that's
I just came,
Tell us how
I
big
just,
it is.
I just spent 1,200
Well,
miles on the interstate from Colorado to here, and it's, oh my goodness, these people.
it's a preference of vehicle. That's, you can't,
Yeah,
you know, you
well,
can't make
know,
past
du-
judgment on
dualies-
that.
Dualies on the back is not gonna fit in the 7.5 feet.
You know, I like the idea of have you guys have the authority to do that, but why not just do it from the standard of, going either from compact to standard or universal? So, you know, instead of saying 10%, you're saying, hey, you should be, you know, universal is 8.5, well, we're gonna allow you to go to 9. You know, and you guys should be able to make that decision.
I was going that way.
Yeah.
The
So
administrator.
you can still keep all of your different identities for the universal, compact, and standard, but you can go up or down based on, give you the flexibility to do that on your own.
And then if the applicant doesn't have, if you can't reach an agreement with the applicant, then would they be able to go to the zoning board of appeals and say, well, we couldn't get staff to see it our way, so we're gonna go to the.
That would be an appropriate time to go there, but, you know, as it appears now, it's just automatic.
Yeah, and I mean, even then with the compact, standard, and universal, the sizes that have been required are not specifically delineated. It would be bigger than even those spaces. That's why we had the 10%, which could go up but not down. Or, you know, if it goes down, those are classified as compact spaces or something like that. We could certainly work that out. We're kind of thinking, what is the best method? We can kind of go over what our opinion is of how these methods rank, if you want to hear that, or if you want to ask me more questions and hash it out for a second, that's cool too.
Okay.
Rob, another question.
Yeah.
Doesn't the business kind of dictate how the size of the parking lots?
Yeah.
Example, Sam's Club, they're huge.
Mhm.
That should be the same as maybe a apartment building.
Yeah, I agree, and you know, if Costco came in here, these parking spaces might not even fit one of their shopping carts. So like, you know, we want that to be flexible, and we want, but we don't necessarily want everybody to go big just because it's the easiest. That seems like it's a justification, like, hey, this is our clientele, this is who's showing up. But we don't necessarily want that for everything. That's why we kind of want an exception process.
I mean, don't you guys reserve the right to change according to, based on, you know?
I agree we should, but with our reading of the code, we can't right now.
Well, I would get rid of the word must, the first thing. Maybe should would be an appropriate switch, but something, you know, it's strictly holding those dimensions is gonna cause people go to variances all the time, and you don't want variances to show up and be automatic, because it loses its authority essentially. You know, the board should say, this is not gonna fly, you can't have a half-foot setback with a drop forge.
Yeah, so that suggestion would be somewhere between 2 and 6 on the board, so.
Well, let me chime in.
Oh, sure, Rob, go ahead.
Well, I'm glad you have a 7 option, because -2 commissioner, we are 7 people. And my guess is normally when you have 7 people, you get 7 opinions, and you have 7 options. Anyway, no, I was okay with, I'm listening to all the discussion, I'm okay with number 5 and other one, but the way Sam described, the way he articulated very well, I think that I would be more inclined toward number 5, because for any kind of a variation, special request, of a large vehicle or whatever, that it gives the staff to review that. It should come to the planning commission, and then it give you a set of new eyes, and then to the village board. I mean, I was open to all of these, and I'm listening, but the way Sam described, based on that, my input is, I think number 5 should be considered very seriously.
Okay, well, please don't get upset when we rank what our, I have like kind of a ranking of what our opinions are as
Like I
far as.
said, you gave 7 options, you asked 7 people, you're gonna get 7 opinions.
Exactly. So I went ahead and kind of ranked them as far as staff. We agree as far as like in a tier list of what our most preference is, and I will kind of go and say what, why on each one of these, and then I guess we can kind of fill in there. So this is done through like what is known as a tier list, which is, S through F, S standing for superb, which is on the top. So at the bottom, we would put the CUP process, which is number 5, for the reason that where it's currently having 1 hearing and 1 meeting, now it would be 2. And that also one of those is the most important hearing that we have twice a month, which is the village board. So we do want to save them time. And with the CUP process being what it is, we actually have to create more specifications in order to enforce it at all. So in order to deny a CUP, it has to have a certain set of criteria, and you just basically go off and check a list. And if they meet it, you pass it. So we don't necessarily think that's the best one, but if there needs to be some additional oversight or another meeting, that's something that we can consider. So I'll go through this quickly. I don't want to spend too much time. And D would be the variance status quo, what we have right now. If they have an exception, they go to the board. The board has been generous. I can't remember the last time that they declined a variance request. And that is its own topic, because the laws and standards of when and when they shouldn't be passed is open to interpretation. And C, administrative adjustments, that's perfectly fine. This is like mid. The process works. We've had it before. It's relatively unobtrusive. It only costs a developer 10 days. The only negative about this is there's really no give. You can get the allowance, but there's nothing else about it to maybe offset it.
I'm sorry, I thought that was part of the administrative adjustment. An adjustment to me is a give and take, so maybe there's some blend of that.
An adjustment is like a blanket small exception. There's no extra requirements for that exception.
In the code now.
In the code now, yeah. So, sort of a B tier would be a blanket, like sort of a 10% leeway or whatever percent you decide, which would basically just adjust the numbers in the table, eliminate the must. And so those are just the ranges. The negative of that is that, again, there's nothing to offset somebody going larger or anything like that. The architectural allowance exceptions is almost the opposite of that. We like that, but it also, the standards and criteria are too strict. You don't need to basically have a world-renowned architect designing the building in order to get a 2 feet in your drive aisles, which is one of the things. It shouldn't, don't have to meet financial standards or something like that. And that doesn't seem to match well. A tier, which is great, would be using that interpolation clause. I think that's in the exact portion of the code that we're talking about. And that would also be with considering of the language of must, gives the authority to the community development director. I would say that almost kind of implicitly follows that it would have to be submitted by a certified engineer and then approved by our village engineer. That works. And then S would be for us, which is superb, expanding the exception process for the parking minimums and maximums. That's currently in the code for parkings and minimums and maximums. They have a couple of criteria for it, what they have to provide, as well as, you know, what the range is that they can get. And that is in the parking part of the code. It doesn't take any extra time, and there's no extra costs on behalf of the developer. And that's our opinion, colorfully presented. If you played a lot of video games like Sam and I do, this is relatively hilarious, but I'll just let you know that. Yeah. Everybody likes a good chart or listicle, so so now seeing that, discussion or questions or thoughts?
Is there a blending of administrative adjustments and the superb? Is there some way to incorporate some of the best parts of each?
Yeah, I think so. You could basically talk about it, you know, reference the administrative adjustment part in that section of the code and put additional criteria on it, and still have to call, like, basically ask neighbors and stuff like that. So I think, yeah, you can. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, have you guys taken any of these processes through some of the more recent ones that were approved, that through the variance, did you take and go back and say, okay, how would these work if we did it each of these different ways? Did you guys go through that process at all?
I think we did for the Johnson Bank one that you guys saw recently, because they're one of the ones, they didn't actually apply for the variance. No, they did.
Mhm.
They were one of the ones, sorry. They applied for the variance, and then they actually applied for some of the administrative adjustment procedures that you approved for allowing a single-story building in that more intense commercial district, if you remember that change a couple months ago. And one of the criteria in that is that they actually install some green infrastructure methods, so permeable pavers, rain gardens, stormwater, and they actually have some bioswale rain gardens in their stormwater features. And so when we're thinking about potential options here, we're like, we always look for ways that we can encourage those good features by potentially double counting them. So if they're doing one good thing, that can count for flexibility in other areas. And so in that regard, that's kind of what drove some of our rankings here is, hey, if we have a circumstance where someone might be applying for a different type of exception, potentially for architecture, in what ways can we cross-count those exceptions while still pushing forward good design and good village goals and objectives?
Because we always think about, well, why are we regulating this? Why is one space worse than the other? And obviously a lot of the things is more blacktop equals more runoff equals more heat island effect. So then the thing that we can actually do that directly correlates and mitigates that is additional landscaping and additional stormwater features. So those do correspond to each other.
So they did get a variance, I get that. But what I'm getting at is there something that, which one of these would have worked best for you guys to be able to do that without the variance? That's what I'm saying. If they would have sat down with you and said, hey, if we had been able to do S or A or B, whichever one,
Well,
you know.
they did D, so anything above D, in our opinion, would have been much more applicable. So they did D and they got approved for a B at the same time. And basically, they got an exception to having a one-story where a two-story is required, and that was on a staff level. But then to go to the Board of Zoning Appeals to get a 1-foot exception on the parking spaces. So they had to go to the higher body to get what we felt was the lesser exception. So any of those would work. That's why we're putting them all in front of you.
Well, what you're saying is, it also means that if they don't like the variances, they're going to go higher up.
There was nothing higher than the Board of Zoning Appeals. So,
I know, but my point is that the developers, when they design, if they are not pleased with the decisions of the variance, then they're going to go to the higher up. So,
so if, that's the thing. So if our exception process,
Yeah.
if they're not, if we give an exception and it's not, if we say no, or it's too much for what we can approve, yes, they do go to the variance board, which has, or the Board of Zoning Appeals, which has the authority to grant a variance. As the guidance says the minimum that is required, but really there's nothing written about how much of a variance you can authorize. It's a bit silly in my mind, but it is what it is.
okay, anyway, because of that, I thought that the more I think about that, the more I think is the come back to the planning commission and the board, I would give it a serious consideration. But let me ask you another question. These dimensions of the width of the parking lot, how do they fit for the parking lot when they have two lines? Because I personally like two lines separation. Because many people have the habit of when there's one yellow line, they park right 6 inches, 3 inches before the line. So I like the two line where the doors are not bumping into each other. So my question is the width dimensions in each option you have, how do they fit in that design?
I mean, I don't think they do. Currently, but I think that if we want to have that flexibility to prove something like that, we need a different method. I mean,
So then you're talking about variance.
yeah, or variance, one of these types of variances to do it on a staff level. Like, we don't want to bring these in front of the Board of Zoning Appeals all the time, or, in front of Village Board and you guys every time, because we think you guys could be using your time better, even just not being here. You could be at home enjoying your family. And I mean, like, it gets to the point, like in Milwaukee, like if you see their Board of Zoning Appeals, like their agendas, it goes all day. It goes from the morning all the way to the night. And there's like 50 in a day, because so many parts of their code have to require variance to get around. And it's something that we don't want to have to resort to, because eventually they get so used to it that that's just how they operate. That's what the official approval process is.
It's the Board of Zoning Approvals.
Yes.
Yeah, the county was like that for a while anyway, seemed like.
I think we've heard a good amount of feedback today. I think if the commission is amenable, we can take a stab at trying to merge a couple of these together based on the feedback of what you've liked and what you haven't. We'll bring that forward to you all next month with a proposed ordinance, and then you can make a recommendation to the village board if you like it, or you can table it for further discussion. But I think we have enough feedback here today that I think we have a good amount of direction about what each of you would like to see incorporated into flexibilities, but also standards and what you want to see.
And I'm sure we'll hear from our missing members on the subject at some particular point in time. I still think Davis can chair from South Carolina. Like, I think he can just hop on a plane and, or zooming in, yeah. All right, well, that's it for me, unless anybody had any last thoughts. I know that was exciting stuff. But we care about process here and results. So we have no staff reports for this month. And next month will be on August 20th, 2025 at 1 p.m. I assure you our agenda for that month will not be as light.
Okay.
That's all I got to say about that.
All right. On that note, I'll take one last motion.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Let's go home.